Before I tell you about the international trends in open data, I want to share with you a very, very disturbing truth. I was tricked into staying in Hong Kong. I told my mother 7 years ago, Mom, I'm just going on exchange to Hong Kong for 6 months. And I hadn't really heard about Hong Kong before. I thought, oh, it's a city just outside of China. It'll be fun for 6 months, right? It's just another city. I went to Hong Kong U. They gave me a room with a view over the harbor, and every night before sleeping, I overlooked Tsing Yi Island. Okay, sparkling lights of the southern Tsing Yi Island, the oil depots. I thought it was absolutely amazing. Stonecutters Bridge was just being built, and I fell in love with the city, and I decided never to leave again. Okay, my mother is Hong Kong, yay! Okay, so my mother is very upset. I'm very happy. I believe I live in the best city in the world. But as an outsider, I think that there are still some things that we can improve in this city. And a better open data provision is one of them. Thankfully, Data.One is hard at work here. Okay, so let me tell you about how open data is spreading around the world. So in Hong Kong, we talk about PSI, public sector information. Abroad, if you look it up on Google, you'll find open data, open government data, open academic data, open science data, open traffic data. It's basically all the data that is used in the public domain for the public good. Okay, so if you track, like you're running around Tsing Yi Island on the track and you're sweating a lot, if you record like how much you sweat, is not public data, right? But if you record like all the track spots in Hong Kong where you can run, that would be considered open data. So there's now these leaderboards where you can where they're ranking like how well countries are doing with open data, and I would love for Hong Kong to rise to the top of the charts there. There's all kinds of data sets, right? So if you go to the Data.One portal, you should just look through them and find a data set that appeals to you. Okay. Like I said, there's a lot of things that I think are great about Hong Kong, but there's still some things that we can improve on. And Data.One and the OGCIO's policy is part of that. Okay? So when I was young and still living in this beautiful country of the Netherlands, I loved government. I was like, I really want to be part of government. Like they're the ones in control. And then I asked government, so what can I do? You know, what kind of touch points do I have as a 15-year-old? They told me, you have to wait. You have to wait until you're 18 years old. And then you can vote once every 4 years. And you can bankroll the government, right? They said, you can give us your money and we'll do government stuff for you. So you're basically a client of government services, right? So with open data, we still have the same model as old, but there's something else, right? Government now provides us with raw materials, so raw data sets. By themselves, they're useless, right? No one's going to look at those data sets and think like, wow, if only I had like all 500,000 Hong Kong restaurants before in one long list, right? It's not. They're raw materials, and they need developers like you guys here to turn them into something valuable, okay? And that's something about Hong Kong, like the old Hong Kong mindset is about, like, if you have an advantage, don't give it away. Don't keep it to yourself. And that's how you're going to make money, right? If you have resources, then don't tell anyone about it. And I think open data is stepping away from that, okay? If you have used some government services, digital ones, and you thought, they're actually not really that good, I've had some of those experiences. That's partially because the data that the government makes available is interconnected with the people who are building those services, right? So by decoupling the provision of data and the building of the apps, it's going to be a competition of who builds the best services, right? It's no longer about who has the data, who has the best secrets. It's about who can actually build the best tools for it, right? And that's where I think Hong Kong is going to improve, okay? This app competition is really great because it gives all of us an opportunity to participate. I'll share with you 3 trends to inspire you to build applications, right? So these are 3 international trends that I've observed for people building applications. Okay, launch with open government data. Okay, if you, after this talk, are really excited, you go to the Data.One portal and think like, wow, there's so many data sets. If only I could, I need more. I can't wait for the government to release more data. I need it now, okay? Don't worry, it'll come eventually. You don't need it today. Just start building your app, launch with government data, and then there's many other ways that you can expand on those data sets, right? My favorite example of that is Parkopedia. They started in the UK with government parking data sets. So all the places in the UK where you could park your car. By itself, that's very useful. But then they also expanded and they said, like, if you are a private citizen and you have a driveway, so that's like this piece of road in front of your house where you can park your car, you can now put it online on the site and you can get some money for people parking their cars in front of your house. Right? So now they don't just have the government data, they also have all the private data. And how are these guys making money? Well, they're now being integrated into Lexus, BMW cars, so that if you ask the car like, hey, find me a parking spot, they'll use this tool to suggest a parking space. Very lucrative, right? There's the neighborhood data portal, and I think this is, this is what every city needs. It's a visual way of displaying all the data that's available. So my favorite example here is Plan for a Healthy LA. So the city of Los Angeles, they have lots of data sets, and they have displayed it in a way that is easy to explore, okay? We're all technical people, but some medical students, right? They might be wondering like, hey, what about health? What about health data sets? Right? So instead of having all those lines of data, it's just 2 topics. So you're interested in kind of obese children, right? Why are children in the US obese? Why are they kind of bigger? Okay? So you start discovering and you think like, hey, let's look at the worst place in LA. The worst place in LA happens to be a neighborhood in the south. If you look down, you drill down into this neighborhood, the Harbor Gateway, and you find out everything about the ethnic makeup, right? You find out that, ooh, hardship index, it's kind of difficult living there. You'd find out that, it's the worst in LA, 35% of the children are obese, right? You continue, diabetes. Hey, there's a link between obesity and diabetes. Who knew, right? You continue researching, and you'd find out at the very bottom, Walkability index, okay? Walkability index in this neighborhood is terrible, right? And if you go through the data set and you go from neighborhood to neighborhood, you'd find out that there's a direct link between walkability and obesity rates. If you look into what a walkability index is, you'd find out, hey, actually it's things like road congestion. It's things like how far are parks, how many parks are there, okay? And this way you could inform government policy and say like, hey, we need to cut down on cars, we need to build more parks because our kids are exploding in size, okay? As a third and final trend is there's an app for that, okay? So if there's only one thing that you take away from this talk is that if you build an app, build it for a single purpose. Build it with a clear idea in mind that you can clearly communicate to your users so that when they think like, oh, I want to do X, then they think, there's an app for that, and they'll use your app so you'll get users that way, right? So do one thing only and do it well. My favorite example here is Dweller. It's developed by the US Census Bureau, okay? Census Bureau, guess how much data they have? They have billions and billions and billions of terabytes of data, right, on US demographics. But instead of trying to solve all the problems possible with the data, they focused on one use case. Where should I move to? Where should I dwell, right? So 20 million Americans every year, they move to another place, and this app helps them to decide where to live, okay? It's kind of like this game where they ask you 12 questions, right? What's your favorite mode of transport to work? What's your favorite nightlife activity? And within 12 questions, they'll be able to pinpoint exactly where you should live. I've used this app before, and if I ever leave Hong Kong, which is never, I would have to live in either New York or Silicon Valley. That's the two things that they suggested to me. And I'm a developer, so I was quite happy that it was so precise. Okay, so for Open Data Hong Kong, we have social get-togethers, but I think what's more relevant for the audience here is that we also host hackathons. Okay, who's ever been to a hackathon? No one's been to a hackathon. Oh, that's so sad. Okay, do you know what a hackathon is? It's where you trade your free time. You trade in your free time to build awesome, awesome applications. Okay, it's like a weekend where developers get together with journalists, with policy people, with designers. They form teams. They pitch to each other and say like, hey, I've got an idea. Let's build it. Okay, you team up with sometimes more experienced developers, so you can all learn from each other. And at the end of 48 hours of programming, you pitch and you show off what you've built. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised what people can build in 48 hours if they work together and put their minds to it. Our Data.One Hackathon is on the 25th of January next year. So shoot me an email if you're interested. I'm looking forward to all of your applications. Thank you very much.